Alright, in this video I'm really quickly going to go through the actual quantitative energy associated with the change of state of a material. If we think about the change of state, there's going to be some set amount of energy that it requires to break the intermolecular attraction that's causing the state change between whether it's a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a gas. And then so the amount of energy is going to depend on that. The definition of that is the latent heat. So we can have the latent heat of fusion, and that's the amount of energy required to break the intermolecular attraction to go from a solid to a liquid. Or we have the latent heat of vaporization, which is the amount of energy required to go from a liquid to a gas. Typically, it requires a lot more energy to go from liquid to gas than it does to go from solid to liquid, but you can see that in those numbers. That's not the only factor that talks about the amount of energy or the amount of heat that's going to be associated with that state change. The secondary one is the actual mass that we're trying to change the state of. So the formula is the mass times the latent heat of fusion if we're doing a problem where something's going from a solid to a liquid, or vaporization if we're doing a problem where something's going from a liquid to a gas. So the only other thing to be aware of is when we look at these numbers, they're number of joules per kilogram. So whenever we have our masses, we of course have to make sure that our mass is in kilograms. Looking at the specific problem, how much energy is required to melt 200 grams of ice and boil the same amount of water? So if we want the Q for the state change from solid to liquid, we just have to take the mass times the latent heat of fusion. Our mass here is 0.2. Our latent heat of fusion is 3.4 times 10 to the 5 joules per kilogram. This is in kilograms. So our kilograms cancel out, and we get 6.8 times 10 to the 4 joules of energy that would have to be put in to melt that ice. Similarly, if we want to go from liquid to gas, we have the same basic formula, except now we're going to use the latent heat of vaporization. The mass of the water turning to ice will be the same, 0.2 kilograms. And this time, obviously, we're using the latent heat of vaporization, 2.3 times 10 to the 6 joules per kilogram. So what is that? 4.6 times 10 to the 5 joules. So that's how you can figure out the amount of energy required to change the state.